All right, so I want to talk now about pronoun agreement. And again, I have four sentences. Each one of these sentences has a pronoun agreement issue. So what I would like you to do is, if you want to try to figure out what those are, go ahead and pause the video and try to find the pronoun agreement error. Um, I'm going to go to the next slide that has the answers. So, so the first one we had after World War I, Amelia Earhart took flying lessons. She learned quickly, but it cost her most of her salary. So the it should be they, because with personal pronouns, the question becomes, what is the pronoun referring to? A personal pronoun should be referring to something. Okay, and what it's referring to is the antecedent, right? And that's the noun. So what is it referring to? It's referring to lessons. Okay, so so in this case, lessons is plural, so it should be they because it is a singular pronoun. All right. Now the next one's a little bit trickier. So the original said at first everyone could not believe their eyes when she deliberately put her plane into a spin. So as we've learned with indefinite pronouns, the indefinite pronoun everyone is singular. So technically, you're not supposed to use a plural pronoun to refer to a singular indefinite pronoun, right? So everyone and there do not match. They don't agree. Even though, if you were saying that sentence, or if you heard somebody else saying it, if I were saying that sentence to somebody, I probably would say everyone could not believe their eyes, right? This is how we're used to hearing it. But technically, it's an agreement issue, right? And so, in situations where you're writing or even speaking formally, you should be aware of that. You should be aware of the agreement issue and try to avoid it. So, one way to avoid it is to take the there and try to make it singular so that it matches everyone. So we take there and we turn it into his or her, right? And some grammatical books will encourage you to do this, all right? Personally, I don't like his or her. It sounds awkward. It assumes that everybody in the group identifies as a he or a she. So it does not consider the possibility that that there are people who identify as non-binary in the group. Okay, and so there's all sorts of and also, like I said before, you know, this is not how people typically talk. People generally aren't going to say his or her eyes, which is why in a situation like this, my preferred correction would be to keep there and change everyone, right? So if we change everyone and make the subject plural, now we don't have an agreement issue. At first, people could not believe their eyes. It could be or spectators, or at first, observers could not believe their eyes. So there's all sorts of possibilities for changing the subject, and if we make the subject plural, we don't have the agreement issue. It's not awkward anymore. I mean, this is a sentence that you would actually say and not feel strange saying, right? So it matches how we actually talk, and it's inclusive. So that would be my preferred solution for this issue, is change everyone to a plural like people. And same thing for number 3. Each spectator would gasp when they heard her. So each spectator, that would be singular. They is plural. All right. So, and again, some books will tell you to change it to he or she. All right. And for the reasons I've already said, I think the best solution is to just change each spectator to spectators. These spectators would gasp when they heard her cut the engine off. You're saying the exact same thing, and in a way that seems more natural. So, and this is not to say that you should never use everyone or each spectator. You should just avoid using them in sentences that are going to have other pronouns, Or if you're going to use them, try to just avoid using other pronouns in the sentence. So, like for example, I could just say for number two, I could get rid of the pronoun entirely. Um, uh, I could say at first, everyone could not believe that she put her plane into a spin, and just get rid of the his or her eyes part or their eyes part, uh, and that's fine, you know. So it's not that you can't use it; you just want to avoid using it in sentences where there's going to be an agreement issue. All right, same thing. I could say each spectator would gasp when Amelia Earhart cut the engine off. Okay, and that's fine. But when you have sentences where you need to refer back to that subject with another pronoun, make, and it's clearly a situation where you're referring to more than one person, just make the subject plural. Okay. Um, and number four, uh, the difference between 2, 3, and 4 is that we're no longer talking about a group. Okay. So when an aviator wants to break records, they will work very hard, was what the original said. So they is referring to an aviator. So, so you can, in a case like this, it is okay to just choose a singular pronoun that seems appropriate. And since the aviator we're referring to is Amelia Earhart, then, then it seems appropriate just to use the she here, because, even though, we're speaking generally about aviators, we're also really talking about Amelia Earhart. Okay. Um, Again, if you're, if you're sort of concerned about, sort of being inclusive of people who may not identify with he or she, you could also just make aviator plural. When aviators want to break records, they will work very hard, and get around the issue that way. Okay. So the last thing that I want to cover before we look at the homework exercises is pronoun case. All right. So with pronoun case, again, we're dealing with personal pronouns, and we typically separate those pronouns into subject and object pronouns. Possessive pronouns is another example of case, but possessive pronouns aren't usually confused like subject and object pronouns are. But in the reading, you see the examples. So like a possessive pronoun would be our or their, or his. Okay, but I wanted to focus on subject and object pronouns because this is where people sometimes get confused. The difference between a subject and an object pronoun is simply that you're going to use a subject pronoun when it's the subject of a sentence. All right, that's the easiest way to understand it. There are certain cases, like if you have a linking verb like is, like where if the pronoun comes after a linking verb, it should still be a subject pronoun and not an object pronoun. Okay, so like if I would say it is I, as opposed to it is me. Again, sounds a little stuffy and unnatural. So you're grammatically correct. You might just find a different way to express that idea. But for the most part, subject pronouns are going to be subjects of verbs. Object pronouns are not going to be subjects of verbs. Okay. One of the ones that always seems to throw people off is who and whom. Partly because I think they don't realize that this is a pronoun, and it's a pronoun case issue. So who is the same kind of pronoun as he, she, we, they. Whom is the same kind of pronoun as him, her, us, them. So the question really just becomes, is the pronoun the subject of the verb? And if so, we're going to use who. If not, we're going to use whom. All right. So again, let's look at some examples. So all these sentences have an issue with pronouns and pronoun case. So what I want you to do is to identify the issue. The first one, I will say the first one is technically not quite a pronoun case issue, but it is an issue that is similar. Um, but see if you can figure out what the problem is with 1, 2, 3, and 4. And and if you want to pause the video to do that, you can. I'm moving on to the next slide where I cover the answers. So number one, and the top says pronoun agreement. It should say pronoun case. But number one, as I said before, not technically a pronoun case issue. The pronoun case is relevant here. Really, the problem with saying some of the people that saw the elevator is that if you're referring to people, you should use who or whom. Okay. And you should avoid using that to refer to people. Now, once you decide to recognize that, then you do have to choose the correct case. And in the example of number one, we're going to use who because it's the subject of the verb saw, right? So just like you would say he saw the aviator, you would also say who saw the aviator, all right? Number two, I said us Amelia Earhart fans would love to have video of these historic flights. So anytime you have a pronoun, it's usually going to be we or us that's followed by a noun, like we fans. And this one is a little confusing because we threw modern Earhart fans. But the same thing as saying if I say we fans would love to have video, all right? So the pronoun case is going to be determined by, again, the relationship to the verb. And it's going to be the same whether that word fans is in the sentence or not. So if I got rid of fans, I would say we would love to have video of these historic flights. Okay. If I said, for example, that somebody is going to give us these videos, I would also say somebody is going to give us fans these videos. All right. And then for number three, okay, whom would Amelia Earhart inspire today? All right. So the original said who. So in this case, who should be whom, because if we look at the verb, okay, the verb is inspire. All right. Who is doing the inspiring? In this case, Amelia Earhart is the subject of that verb. Okay, so that's why we need to use whom, because this pronoun is not the subject of the verb Amelia Earhart is. But if I said whom in this class will learn more about Amelia Earhart, okay, now the verb is learn, and Amelia Earhart's not doing the learning. Okay, so the pronoun in this case is the subject of the verb learn. Say who will learn, so that should be who. Okay. So pronoun case issues, I guess, another pronoun case issue that you sometimes run across is if I said Amelia and I are going to the store, all right? And just like if I said we fans, if I say Amelia and I are going to the store, it's going to be the same pronoun you would use if Amelia were not in the sentence. So I am going to the store, Amelia and I are going to the store. Okay. But if I said Gus gave me a present, I would also say Gus gave Amelia and me a present. Right? So sometimes, people have the impression that if it should always be Amelia and I, right? Gus gave Amelia and I a present. Not true though. Because it always depends on whether it's the subject. So, if you take Amelia out of the sentence, okay, Gus gave me a present, Gus gave Amelia and me a present. I went to the store, Amelia and I went to the store. Okay, so don't get confused around pronoun case when you have compound subjects or compound objects where there's another person and the pronoun. All right, so here's what I wanted to do now. I wanted to look at the exercises. And unlike last time, I'm not going to go through the entire exercise. I'm just going to do um, I'm just going to do the first half of the exercise. And I noticed, as I do this, when I'm looking at it, I'm zooming into different parts of the exercise. This is the same thing with um, uh, the reading that I did. But for you, it may not zoom in. So if it's not zooming in, I would have the exercise in front of me, so it's easier for you to read and follow what I'm doing. Okay. But in this exercise, the first one, subject verb agreement. Okay, you're trying to decide what is where is the agreement issue. So in this case, in each of these, you have two subject verb combinations. One of them is correct, the other one is incorrect. Okay, so you're finding the incorrect one and correcting it. So in number one, Aesop's story, The Fox and the Grapes, tells us about a fox who try unsuccessfully to get some grapes. All right. Um, so in the first case, the first subject verb, story tells. Story is singular, tells is singular. No agreement issue there. But in the second one, okay, we have who try. All right. So because who is a pronoun, it's a personal pronoun. To determine whether who is singular or plural, we have to look at what it's referring to. Okay. So just like you would say a fox tries, you would also say a fox who tries. So that's the agreement issue. Okay, it should be a fox who tries, not a fox who try. Now, if fox were plural, if I said foxes who try, then try would be correct. Try would be the correct plural form. But in this case, it should be a fox who tries. Number two, there are a big bunch of grapes hanging over the top of a wall, and the fox is hot and thirsty. So the first pairing, bunch, is paired with the verb are. Okay, bunch is singular, but are is plural. All right, so that's our agreement issue. And it's a little confusing because this is a case where the subject comes after the verb. All right, but the subject is bunch, the verb is are. So it should be there is a big bunch of grapes hanging over the top of the wall. All right, and again, bunch is the subject, not grapes, because grapes comes after a preposition of. Number three, a favorite food of his are grapes, and he leaps up some without success. All right, so so food here is singular. So so we need a singular verb, and just like the last one, are is plural. And so it should be a favorite food of his is grapes. Okay, so even though it's it sounds a little strange saying is grapes, the subject here is food. And the other example, he leads up, or the other subject verb, he leaps, that's correct. He is subject, he is singular, leaps is also singular. All right, so it should be a favorite food of his is grapes, not are grapes, because the subject is food. 4, hoping that no crowd of friends are watching, the fox takes a running leap for the top of the wall. All right, so in 4, the subject crowd and the verb is are, or are watching. So are, again, is plural. Okay, crowd is singular. Okay, and the subject is crowd, not friends. So because friends comes after the preposition, so crowd is going to be singular. So it should be no crowd of friends is watching. Okay, and then the fox takes is the other subject verb combination, and that one's correct. And then number 5, unsuccessful. The fox in the story tries again and again with the same result. Neither his cleverness nor his high leaps is successful. So this is one of those where we have two subjects at the end, cleverness and leaps, and they're joined by the word nor. So if you remember, two subjects joined by nor, what we're going to do is look at the last subject and make sure it agrees with the last subject. So neither his cleverness Yours high leaps are successful. Okay. So that's all I'm going to go over for that exercise. So, so I did the first half, and then so I want you to try to do the second half of it on your own. And make sure when you're doing this that you are doing the full exercise. So there are 10 items in this exercise, and then 10 items in the next one. So in this one, I'm also going to do the first 5, okay, and have you do the other 5 on your own, okay? So for this one, so number 1, people all over the world knew about Mother Jones. Wherever she went, she was invited into their homes and their workplaces, okay? Um, so this sentence has no errors, okay? So again, 6 of the following sentences have errors, as we see in the beginning, but this one is fine. Okay, so there's no issue. She went, she was. Those are both subjects. Their workplaces is referring to people, so there's no problem with that sentence in terms of pronouns. Okay. Number 2, once she was traveling with Fred Mooney in Mexico, a crowd stopped the train and urged Mooney and she to open the train window. All right. So this one does have a pronoun case issue. All right. And it's Mooney and she. All right. Because as I explained earlier, if you have 2 subjects, or if you have a pronoun with another noun, okay, then you want to try taking away the other noun to see which pronoun you should use. So just like you would say, a crowd stopped the train and urged her to open the train window, you would also say a crowd stopped the train and urged Mooney and her to open the train window. So adding Mooney in the sentence is not going to change her to she, because we can't use she here because it's not the subject of a verb. Okay, so urged Mooney and her. And then number 3, Mooney and she were not sure whether they should open the window, but they decided to do so. When they did, she and him both were showered with red carnations and blue violets. So in this case, just like with number 2, the pronoun case is going to be determined by whether it's the subject of the verb. So Mooney and she were not sure. That's correct, because you would say she was not sure. So you would also say Mooney and she were not sure. Now you would change the verb in that case to a plural, but the same idea applies. Okay, but if you go down to the second sentence, she and him were both showered. Okay, so just like you would say he was showered, you need to say she and he both were showered. Okay, so it should be she and he, not she and him. All right. Number 4, although the people gave the flowers to both him and her, the flowers were meant as gifts in honor of Madre Jones, as the people called her. All right. So this one does not have any pronoun issues because him and her are both pronouns. So that's correct. People gave the flowers to him. People gave the flowers to her. People gave the flowers to both him and her. Okay. And then the last one I'm going to go over, number 5. The trip to Mexico was exhausting, but it was she, over 90 years old, who never ran out of energy. Okay. And so this is one of those that is where you have she, and it's technically not the subject, right? But it does come after the verb was. It comes after a linking verb, like it was she, or it is she. So in this case, the subject, the subject one is correct. So this sentence is correct. You would say it was she, okay? Because it's a linking verb and not an action verb. So we're not going to use the object pronoun there. And then who is correct because that is also the subject, or that is the subject, who never ran out of energy. Okay. So that's all I want to do with this exercise. This exercise is really just looking at pronoun case issues. Okay, so if you can follow, what I did from 1 through 5, then, you should be fine on 6 through 10. All right, so that's it for this video on pronoun issues. Remember to review pronoun case and pronoun agreement before you take that quiz. So um, you're comfortable with both with correcting both of those pronoun issues. All right, thank you, and have a great rest of your day.